Hey, I'm Courtney Waterman, your tutor. Lover of anime, manga, and math. And you just tuned into another session of Tutor Me Sempai. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're jumping into a 6th grade topic, comparing absolute values. Now, if you're new to my channel, I'll be putting timecodes in for this video in the description box below, so use that to skip ahead to whatever part of the video you think is most interesting. As always, if you have any questions about what you see today, or even your own homework, feel free to put it in the comment box below, or visit me on my Facebook page at Tutor Me Sempai and tell me about it there. Today's video should be a rather short one, so leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and let's get started. In today's video, I'll be covering 2 ways you can compare your absolute value. The first way we're going to cover is going to be evaluate it first, then compare the results. The second one is not going to depend on evaluating your absolute values, but it will depend on knowing the definition of the absolute value and using the number line for the absolute value. So if you're curious about either, stay tuned. So like I said, the first one we're going to cover is evaluate first, then compare the results. If you have a hard time evaluating your absolute value, or you have no idea how to do it in the first place, no worries. I have a video talking just about that right up here. You can check that out and then come back to this one. That video will show you not only how to evaluate your absolute values, but it'll tell you why it equals what it equals. So check it out, come back here when you feel most comfortable. So if you're still with me, let's continue. Let's say we have these 2 absolute values. So we have the absolute value of 7 and we have the absolute value of, let's say, 5. We want to see which one is greater or if they're equal. The evaluate first method means first we want to evaluate what these absolute values are. Well, this one is going to equal 7 and this one is going to equal 5. Now, we can easily compare what these values are. Is 7 less than, greater than, or equal to 5? Well, 7 is going to be greater than 5. All right, well, if the absolute value of 7 equals 7 and the absolute value of 5 equals 5, and we know that 7 is greater than 5, that means we know, I'll use blue here, we know that the absolute value of 7 is going to be greater than the absolute value of 5. So you see the evaluate first method is pretty simple. First you take your absolute value, then you're going to evaluate it, then compare the results. That's all you have to do. Let's look at another example. Let's say we have these 2 absolute values here. We have the absolute value of 13 and the absolute value of negative 20. Which one is greater, or are they equal? The first thing we want to do is evaluate each one. So we know that the absolute value of 13 is going to be 13, and we know the absolute value of negative 20 is going to be 20. Now, can we compare 13 and 20? We sure can. Which one's greater, or are they equal? Well, we know that 13 is going to be less than 20, and if these equal these, that means the absolute value of 13 is going to be less than the absolute value of negative 20. Once again, if you're unsure how I got here, check out that video that you found up top, because that's going to explain why this equals this. Let's look at one more example. Let's say we had these 2 absolute values here. Here you have the absolute value of negative 100, and here you have the absolute value of 100. Which one of these are greater than the other, or are they both equal? Well, let's evaluate them first. We know that this is going to be 100, and we know this is going to be 100. Now, is 100 greater than, less than, or equal to 100? Well, in this case, we have equal to. So if these are equal, and these equal these, well, that means these must be equal, right? This is how you're going to compare your absolute values when you do the evaluate first method. But let's say you don't necessarily know how to evaluate, or you forget, or maybe for some reason you're taught how to compare before evaluating. Let's look at another way you can compare your absolute values without actually having to evaluate them first. I call this method the no eval method, because we're not going to try to find out what the absolute value of any absolute value is. We're just going to use the definition of the absolute value and our number line. So let's say we had these 2 absolute values, the absolute value of negative 4 and the absolute value of 3. We want to compare them without evaluating them. Well, in order to do that, we need to know what the definition of the absolute value is. Remember, the definition of the absolute value of a number is going to be how far that number is away from 0. So the absolute value of -4 is how far -4 is away from 0. The absolute value of 3 is how far 3 is away from 0. So all we're going to do is plot these on our number line and then see which one's further. That's going to be the one that's greater. So for 3 we have 1, 2, 3. And for -4 we have -1, -2, -3, -4. Which one's further away from 0? Well, -4 is further away from 0, right? So that means -4, or at least its absolute value, let's put it in blue once again just to be consistent. The absolute value of -4 is going to be greater than the absolute value of 3 because -4 is further away from 0 than 3 is from 0. See, no evaluation happened. You just simply looked at the number line and saw which one was further away from 0. Let's look at another example. Here we have the absolute value of 8 and the absolute value of 5. Let's figure out which one is further away from 0. Now, it might be pretty obvious, but we're going to put it on our number line anyway. Which one is further away from 0? Is it 8 or is it 5? Well, 8 is further away from 0, right? So that means the absolute value of 8 is going to be greater than the absolute value of 5. That's all you have to do. Just put your two numbers on the number line and figure out which one is further away from 0. Let's do one more example. Here we have the absolute value of -6, and here we have the absolute value of 6. Let's put them both on our number line and see which one's further away from 0. So let's start here. Now, I know I drew them a little bit different because I didn't draw them consistently, but don't worry about that. Just figure out which one is actually further away from 0, not because of my drawing, but because of its actual numbers. Which one's further? Well, neither, right? 6 is 6 away, and -6 is 6 away, so they're pretty equal. That means these are going to be equal, and just because I keep forgetting, let's make that consistent with everything else. Equal. They are equal distance away from 0. This is how you can compare your absolute values without actually having to evaluate them first. Simply understand that the definition means that this is going to be a certain distance away from 0, just like this one is, and we got to see which one is actually further from 0. The one that's further away is going to be the larger absolute value. So I hope you're following these examples. I hope you're able to see that comparing your absolute values doesn't necessarily have to be too difficult. Whether you know how to evaluate or you don't, you can still compare your absolute values just like that. If you have any question about what you saw today or even your own homework, remember you can always put it in the comment box below or visit me on my Facebook page at Tutor Me Sempai and tell me all about it there. If you haven't done so already, remember to leave a like. It really helps the channel by letting YouTube know that you found this video helpful and it could be helpful for somebody else as well. So leave that like, smash the subscribe, hit the notification bell, and while you're at it, share this video with a friend. Well, that's all the time I have for today. I really hope it's helped with your homework, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Sempai.